Domestic violence continues to be an issue of concern in today's society. The presence of drugs and alcohol often play a role in escalating these altercations. With us today to talk about this is Anthony Rizzuto, the Program Supervisor for Domestic Violence Offender Services at the Seafield Center. Anthony, welcome to Something of Substance.
Hey Art, how are you?
Great, thank you. How did you get into working with perpetrators of domestic violence?
Probably about 2 years into facilitating substance abuse groups, I noticed that there was this work being done. I used to work in the Mineola outpatient, and they had a batterers intervention program, and I noticed that we were providing services, and I had asked my supervisor about it, and they told me pretty much what it was about. We would identify, or people would be referred to us particularly for what we call power and control group. So we would have people that would have co-occurring, so they would have a issue with substance abuse, and then in addition to that we would identify that they had a history of being abusive. So they would go into this program. So I ended up getting involved. I told them I had an interest in it. They sent me to be trained. I went through an extensive training, and then after the training I started facilitating the groups, and have been doing that for the last 8 years now.
Wow. And most people don't necessarily associate substance abuse and domestic violence. What's the connection there?
You know, it's interesting because myself, including a lot of other people, I think, believe at times that substance abuse caused the problem, that substance abuse was the reason for the domestic violence. I've had, most of my work is with perpetrators of domestic violence, but I have had interaction with survivors of domestic violence, and you know, a lot of times, a lot of survivors will, you know, look and tell us that they believed that that was the reason that he did what he did. What I've learned, and something that I do a lot of speaking on, is that substance abuse doesn't cause domestic violence. There's a strong correlation, but it's not a cause and effect. And we know that because we know that there are many perpetrators of domestic violence, or we know many people have been extremely abusive and have never had a drink or a drug in their life. And we also know that there are a lot of people that abuse drugs and alcohol who have never been abusive. Right. So it's not a requirement that if you drink this, you will be abusive. If you sniff this or if you take this, you'll be abusive. But what we do know is we know that people who have a history of abusive behaviors have perhaps grown up in an environment or a belief system that allows that to take place, that's a viable option for them to act within an intimate partner relationship. If that person consumes drugs or alcohol, we know that it increases the frequency of the abuse, and we also know that it increases the severity of the damage that happens to the survivor.
How do you approach treating this population? Because I imagine many of the men that are under your treatment are referred by law enforcement, some by family members, something has come up, but they don't always accept that necessarily this is a problem for them. Again, they're also blaming it on the substance use perhaps, a bad argument, she incited this somehow or whatever it might be. How do you approach treatment?
That's a great point, because I will tell you that a majority, a very high majority, either don't believe that they need to be in there, don't want to be there. Think about it this way. There was a statistic that was given to me when I first went through the training that 90 to 95% of men that are abusive towards their partners grew up in a home where they were either the victim or witnessed it.
Right.
So if you think about that for a second, and I've had this experience where people are not very quick to own that perhaps they're an alcoholic or perhaps they're an addict. But I can tell you in my experience, they're much quicker to accept that than that they're an abusive partner, especially taking into consideration that a lot of them, in most cases, what I've seen is a lot of them will tell me how they hated their father. So you're putting me in the same category as him. He kicked my mother in the stomach, he pushed her down the stairs, she ended up dying because of that, and you want to put me in the same category as that? And they will stand behind the fact that they've never hit her. But as I said, you know, domestic violence is more than just hitting. So I had one particular patient who prided himself on that he never hit her, but threw dishes across the table, threw the table upside down, punched holes in the walls. So the intimidation, the instilling of fear, you know, to get the result, the desired result was there.
Right. So working with people, I guess it's just trying to find different ways of pointing out some of these patterns and helping them to see without being accusatory, without being necessarily confrontative, but helping them over time to gain some insight into what's exactly motivating them and how they behave.
Right. You know, Art, my belief is whether it be substance abuse or whether it be doing power and control work, I think you would agree with this, that as clinicians, we don't have the ability to change anybody.
Right.
The only person that can change anybody is themselves. What we do is we try to create a forum. A, is there anything that needs to change?
Mm-hmm.
B, if so, what is it? And C, how would you do that? So a lot of the people when they come in are not open to hearing, and that's the beauty of group.
Right.
And if you have some members who have been in there who have been able to come out on the other side and see like, wow, you know what, because a lot of them, they didn't view the yelling and screaming as abuse.
Right.
They viewed the abuse when they finally hit her.
Right.
So, but the abuse was going on way before that. So they don't understand one time, and I'm arrested and she called the police, especially if they grew up in an environment where perhaps the mother never did call the police. So,
well, there wasn't mandatory arrest back then either.
There you go.
Yeah.
And you know, the idea is that the belief system of the men that I work with aligns itself with the abuse. So that's one of the things that I focus on. We take a look at, you know, why do you hurt the one that you love?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you love her, but you hurt her. Where's that coming from? And we'll take a look at that. I'll never forget, I had one patient one day say to me, I was running a group, I was covering for somebody, and I was doing the topic conflict with respect. And he said to me, you know, hold on a second. He said, I think that you and the other clinician, he said, I think that you're trying to make us soft. I think that that's not reality. And he says, let me ask you a question. He said, you've never thought about choking your wife?
Mm-hmm.
This was a question that he asked me. And I paused for a second, and I said, no. Matter of fact, I never thought about choking anybody I ever went out with. Let me go one step further. I never thought about choking any other human being. But the point in this, and his answer to that was, damn, maybe I really belong in here. The point is that this individual, that's an option that comes up for him.
Yeah.
When he gets into a conflict with his loved one, that's one of the pages that comes up in his brain as a means of being able to resolve this problem.
Right.
For me, that doesn't come up.
Right.
So I would love to be able to delete that file. I don't think I can delete that file, but in the group, we try to give him other options.
Right.
And then we ask to practice those options so that it becomes one of the ones that comes up and maybe even the default.
That's great. Well, Anthony, it's been a pleasure talking with you. If anybody wants to contact Seafield Center or yourself regarding referring somebody who is involved in a domestic violence situation, and again, as you said, could either be somebody who's unfortunately on the receiving end of some violence or also perpetrating it, how would they contact you?
They can reach me email. It's Rizzuto, Rizzuto, at seafieldcenter.com, or they're welcome to give me a call. It's 516-316-6387. And if I could just add one thing,
Sure.
Art, because I think this is really important. Two things. One is that domestic violence is not an anger issue. And both survivors, perpetrators, loved ones always see it as he's got an anger problem. And many a times it's looked at and people are rushed off to anger management. And
Right.
Anger management's a great program if the issue is anger.
Right.
But in many cases, what I notice is that the issue isn't anger. And the way I know it's not anger is because they got angry at the police officer and they didn't hit him. They got angry at their boss and they didn't hit him. They got angry at the judge and they didn't hit him. So there's been many situations. The landlord, they get angry and they didn't hit him. But with the partner, I couldn't control my anger. So it's not necessarily an issue of anger. And the other thing I would say is that the dangers involved in people going to couples counseling or marriage counseling when
Yes.
domestic violence is present. It's not a good idea to go because there's a differential in power. In order for couples counseling or marriage counseling to be effective, both parties need to be able to be open and honest. And if there is domestic violence present, one partner is not going to be comfortable. And if they are, they endanger themselves.
It's great to hear your level of passion and expertise with this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Art.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank Anthony Rizzuto for lending his time and expertise on this very important topic.